From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Amarachi Ubani.
Good evening and welcome. Tonight, Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 orders security agencies to begin strict enforcement of COVID-19 lockdown directives as curfew in affected states takes full effect from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. IGP asks police commissioners to enforce compliance with lockdown directives. Journalists, health officials and other essential workers stopped from moving despite exemption order from the president. House of Representatives query whereabouts of Chinese health workers, but the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 insists they only joined in construction of this day Dome Isolation Center with a 30-day visa to stay in Nigeria. Fourth pregnant COVID-19 patient gives birth to twins in Lagos. Doctors say mother and child are in good condition. And in the UK, COVID-19 death toll rises above 35,000 as testing drops below target again. Plus business, news from Abuja, the FCT, and later from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, CBN releases 5 billion naira to Niasol Microfinance Bank for 5,000 beneficiaries of the COVID-19 intervention fund.
On sports news tonight, the Premier League confirms 6 positive coronavirus tests from 3 clubs after the first phase of mass testing.
And from Abuja, Northern security is again on the front burner as Senate asked President Muhammadu Buhari to extend military operations against bandits to Sokoto.
The Presidential Task Force is again directing security agencies across the 3 states of Lagos, Ogun and Kano and the Federal Capital Territory to strictly enforce all restrictions guiding the gradual ease of lockdown as announced by the federal government. The chairman of the task force, Mr. Boss Mustafa, reiterated the directive at the daily news conference of the task force in Abuja, while also stressing the need for security officials to respect the fundamental human rights of citizens.
Ministers, members of...
It is day 2 of the extended ease of lockdown by the federal government, and members of the Presidential Task Force are here to give update on the management of the pandemic. The PTF chairman reiterates the directives for security agencies to strictly enforce the gradual relaxation guidelines.
As I mentioned yesterday, specific directives have been issued to security agencies to strictly enforce the measures. I therefore admonish Nigerians to please observe the restriction in full. I, however, wish to assure our essential workers, such as the frontline medical personnel, the media, that they will be adequately protected. Your obligation is to always carry a valid means of identification.
The National Coordinator and the Minister of Health call on states and individuals to take responsibility.
Experience is beginning to show that breathing complications in COVID-19 patients can arise with little or no notice. This is an added reason why all persons should seek medical attention when they test positive.
So, as I said earlier on, we are encouraging states to come up with their own state-specific initiatives. This pandemic is going to be with us for a little longer. It cannot continue to be driven primarily from the federal level. We have to ensure that state governments start taking ownership.
For the Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, The recent lack of PPEs for health workers should engender a new procurement regime in the nation's health sector.
We're distributing PPEs across the country. We have a whole big logistics plan over the next 4 months of PPE procurement and distribution. But we all know that this is not sustainable. We all know it is not sustainable. We have to go back and normalize the procurement of PPEs into the routine procurement plans of our institutions.
Meanwhile, the task force also gives update on the Madagascar cure.
As God will have it, the president of Guinea-Bissau decided to visit our president last Saturday. So when he was coming, he came with our consignment. In terms of the question of whether it comes with a cost, well, it was handed to me without an invoice. So I assume it doesn't come with any cost. That's my assumption. For that, I think the Madagascar issue and the Chinese issue should be laid to rest.
On easing other sectors of the economy, the task force says much will depend on the response of citizens to the protective guidelines that have been issued.
With that assurance of safety for essential workers from the Secretaries of the Government of the Federation, the latest report reaching us is that the Inspector General of Police has directed all state commissioners of police to stop movements, including that of essential workers. Journalists and medical workers are not left out. In Lagos and Abuja, for instance, journalists have been informed that they would not be allowed to move out of their offices immediately after 8 p.m. But a statement from the Office of the IGP did not mention such directive, as he clearly expressed concern over reports on human rights infractions between the public and personnel of the force, and called for mutual respect between the public and members of the force. As it stands, journalists and health workers across the country are still unsure of their status, even though they have the exemption, having been classed as essential service workers by the president. Our correspondent Olu Phillips is right now one of the scenes where the restrictions are being enforced here in Lagos. He'll be joining us in a minute, but we find the decision by the police inhibiting the free movement of essential workers, particularly health workers and journalists. Even at war, essential workers are usually exempted from such rules. And this is a call on the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation and other concerned authorities to take this up, as it is a clear disregard for rules of engagement and rights to free movement of those on essential duties. Over at the National Assembly, the House of Representatives is asking the Minister of Health for the full details of the activities and whereabouts of the Chinese doctors. This resolution stems from a motion of urgent public importance raised by Representative Dashong Bagos. The lawmakers are not satisfied with the minister's explanation that the doctors are not guests of the federal government, but a Chinese construction firm in Abuja. Our correspondent, Terry Ikumi, reports.
Following the need for an amendment of the Police Act in line with current realities, the House of Representatives considers and adopts the report of the Committee on Police Affairs.
There is a general complaint that the police are ineffective. It is on this note that there is need for repealing and reenacting this bill.
7 matters of urgent public importance are raised and adopted, mostly related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Nigeria's educational system is lagging behind by not being functionally awake to the present reality of online education. Research shows that the level of online learning and preparedness in Nigeria is about only 10% or below.
The House is also cognizant of the need for government action in assembling and mandating medical researchers towards developing indigenous solutions for our healthcare needs.
Also cognizant that a successful production of local vaccines will help the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, and the Federal Ministry of Health to effectively tackle outbreaks, such as the recent outbreaks of gastroenteritis in Lagos, which claimed lives, and the current ravaging COVID-19.
The House also mandated relevant committees to invite the Minister of Health and other health professionals to deliberate on the production of vaccines in Nigeria.
From the peaceful state of Plateau.
The lower chamber is dissatisfied with the response of the federal government on the activities of the 15 Chinese medical professionals.
A 15-member team of Chinese medical personnel arrived in the country to share their experiences in fighting COVID-19 pandemic and were received at the Nnamdi International Airport, Abuja, by some government officials, including the Minister of Health. Contrary to the earlier statement of the Minister of Health on the 14th of May 2020, in a new twist, reportedly told news reporters not to bother his ministry over the whereabouts of the Chinese medical experts who came into Nigeria to support the fight against COVID-19.
The House resolves that the Minister of Health must brief the Speaker on the whereabouts of the Chinese medical professionals. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Speaking of which, the whereabouts of the 15-man Chinese medical team for which the House of Representatives demanded an explanation today, the Minister of Interior said they participated in the installation of equipment at the This Day Dome Isolation Center. Mr. Rauf Aregbesola offered the explanation at the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 briefing, saying that the team is unable to return to China after completing their job in Nigeria because of the existing global travel ban.
Forever appreciate the very, very active, inquisitive, and curious Nigerian journalists who will want to get into everything and expose everything. It's good for a democracy, and we thank you for it. Indeed, 15 Chinese nationals came into Nigeria on the 8th of April this year. And from everything we have heard and said, they were here on the bill of CCECC, a Chinese company working in Nigeria, doing some work for us in several places. And in conjunction with some Nigerian companies, agreed to support us in the effort to respond to the pandemic. They came on a 30-day visa issued in Beijing. They are still here. And I know I need to tell you why they are here. They are still here, not because they've not completed their job, but because there is a restriction on travels in Nigeria occasioned by the protocol of COVID-19.
Controversy continues to trail the presence of the 15-man Chinese medical team in the country. Even before their arrival, questions were raised concerning their mission, especially from the Nigerian medical community. The responses from the authorities have been varied, and in this special report, our correspondent Olumide Macaulay examines some of the contradictions.
A chorus of questions heralded the arrival of the Chinese doctors in Nigeria on April the 9th, while the restriction of flights into the country was in force. Approval of their presence seemingly stamped by the Minister of Health, Dr. Osagie Hanire, who received them in person at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja.
At the most difficult stage of China's fighting against COVID-19, we received support of all means from Nigeria. It's time for us to reciprocate the friendship and the kindness.
But if that's the case, why the secrecy now on their whereabouts? That was one of the other contradictions highlighted by questions from the media at the briefing by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19.
I'd like to know the whereabouts of the Chinese doctors. Yes. I'd like to know where they are now. Where are they operating from?
Well, I want to explain first of all that I think not all of them were doctors, and I think that I heard that some of them are technicians, but they are staff of CCECC. The Ministry of Health is not their host, so we can't always explain what happened to them or where they are. There seems to be a lot of interest in these doctors, or they are the staff of the company, and I think they are on the company visa. So I'll be very happy if you don't ask me about where they are, because they're not really our guests.
Apparently, the Chinese team is made up of doctors, nurses, and laboratory technicians, who also had to undergo a 14-day quarantine period, after which their whereabouts are unknown, which begged the question, where are they now? The truth is, the Chinese doctors' whereabouts and what they're doing now is not really unknown. It's known by them and those who let them into the country, and the Ministry of Health's non-disclosure of their location merely stokes the flame of uncertainty that was needlessly ignited in the first place. Olumide Macaulay, Channels Television.
In part two, after the break, as we said earlier, we'll have more on the whereabouts of the Chinese officials. We'll be joined on the news at 10 by a member of the House of Representatives from Plateau South and East, Mr. Dashong Bagos. Plus, the National Orientation Agency blames security agencies for failing to enforce lockdown guidelines and interstate movement. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television. A reminder of our top stories. Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 orders security agencies to begin strict enforcement of COVID-19 lockdown directives as curfew in affected states takes full effect from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. IGP asks police commissioners to begin enforcement of compliance with lockdown directives. Journalists, health officials and other essential workers stopped from moving. House of Representatives query whereabouts of Chinese health workers, but the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 insists they only join in construction of this day Dome Isolation Center with a 30-day visa to stay in Nigeria. Fourth pregnant COVID-19 patient gives birth to a set of twins in Lagos. Doctors say mother and child are in good condition. And COVID-19 death toll rises above 35,000 in the UK as testing drops below target again. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. We're staying with one of our lead stories tonight. The whereabouts of the Chinese officials have been joined now on the news at 10 by a former House of Representatives, member of the House of Representatives from Plateau South and East, Mr. Dashong Bagos. Thank you for joining us on the news at 10.
Yeah, thank you. Well, just a point of correction there. I'm not the former, I'm the current serving member representing Jos South, Jos East, before my constituents looked for you.
My sincere apologies there. Current member of the House of Representatives from Plateau South and East, Mr. Dashong Bagos. Thank you for joining us on the news at 10. Now, where does all this leave us? There are contradictions about the mission of the Chinese health workers, as you well know. Why is the House of Representatives really interested in their whereabouts?
Yeah, well, if you could remember, on the 7th of April this year, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, in his goodwill, after the outcry of Nigerians on why Chinese medical doctors will come into the country when we have professionals in the country that could and can handle the issue of COVID-19. The Speaker had a meeting with the Minister and his Minister of State, and the Minister assured the Speaker that he's going to brief him on all the activities of the Chinese nationals that will be coming in. And not only that, there were conditions that the Speaker gave the ministry that all the Chinese nationals should follow the NCDC protocol. And if the Speaker have taken those steps, invariably, that's the House speaking. So, which means if we have done such through the Speaker, we need to know what is happening. And now, where we got so alarmed was when the Minister of Health said he don't know the whereabout. And if the minister is saying he don't know where they whereabout, definitely Nigerians will ask the House of Representatives, they will ask the Speaker, well, you assured us that the nationals will follow protocol, so where are they? So that's why it's very important for the House to look into it. And not only in that angle, if 15 people from different country, from a different country will come into Nigeria and suddenly government is saying that they don't know their whereabout, to us is a cause for national security. And because we don't know who they are. We don't have their protocol, and so it's something that we really need to be worried about as representatives of the
understandably,
people.
And you heard the Minister of Interior, Ralph Aregbesola, saying that these Chinese officials did participate in the installation of the This Day Dome Isolation Center. Was that explanation satisfactory to you?
No, not at all, because you don't expect 15 people all the way from China just to come for installation, meaning that we don't have capable hands. So we really want to know. The House will seriously investigate because we really want to know what they have been doing in the past 1 month. Is it just installation? We want to know the manifest of each and every one of them, who really they are, what kind of doctors they are, what is their qualification, and so on and so forth. Is it they are the kind of people that our Nigerian doctors cannot handle? Even on that, since they came, we really want to know which doctors have they been interfacing with in Nigeria, which Nigerian doctors. Definitely will invite them to the House, to even the doctors that they have interfaced with, let them tell us what and the experience they have gathered from the Chinese nationals that they claim to be the doctors. So a lot needs to be looked into, especially in terms of national security.
Right. Right. Member House of Representatives from Plateau South and East, Mr. Dashong Bagos, thank you again for speaking with us on the News at 10.
Thank you.
We're also following updates on the curfew here in Lagos and in some parts of Nigeria, plus the lockdown order, especially at the Lagos-Ogun border. Our correspondent, Olu Phillips, has been monitoring the compliance in those areas. He reports that some travelers are already stranded as all movement in and out of Lagos is completely stopped.
So this is vehicular movements inbound Lagos. And at exactly 8 p.m., they have been stopped, and likely, like every other day, they are supposed to remain here until 6 a.m. when the curfew will be lifted. These are vehicles going into Lagos. Lagos inbound vehicle just at the new border control post here on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway.
So you are already violated the law. No, not the issue of all these things you are talking about. You understand? 8 o'clock, you should not be outside. When 8, you need to outside. Are you getting it? So you don't violate the law. So you just park well like this. Please. So you are just telling us we don't know what we are doing. Park well. Let it backward. Let it backward. Backward, please. Backward. Organic the road, backward.
This is the radio junction, just some few meters away from the State House seat of power in Lagos State, and the current directive on cessation of movement is essentially and effectively in effect. As you can see, vehicles here behind me have been stopped from moving, and if the directive is anything to go by, they're going to be here till tomorrow morning, till about 6 a.m. or 6 a.m. precisely before they can leave this place. And that's the situation here at the radio junction. What can you say to us?
Are you on essential duty?
Yeah.
And right now you can move?
I can't move.
Tell us, please, what's going on?
I got to this junction now and I was told that either journalist, lawyer, doctor, anyone on essential duty, that's a new directive from the CP. And the new directive came to us as a surprise and as a shocking, because we have not had that in the past.
Just my house is just nearby. That's about 100 meters to this place.
What are you going to do now?
If they can't allow me to go, they are going to go back to the hospital.
So we understand, we can see that your men have essentially effected the lockdown, as it were.
Not the PRO of Lagos State.
Yeah, but they have blocked everywhere.
Yes, we are supposed to block. It's total lockdown for tonight. No vehicle is going anywhere.
I see traffic. We have to do something small.
Our correspondent Olu Phillips getting a feel of what people on the road are experiencing tonight. Let's go on now to Abuja, where my colleague Ibrahim Adra is also standing by for more on the news at 10. Hi, Ibrahim. It appears we'll be sleeping in the office tonight, right?
Amarachi, that's the way it's beginning to appear. If anything that has been happening so far is anything to go by. Now, let's talk some more about that easing of lockdown order, which for millions of people in Lagos, Ogun, and indeed here in the Federal Capital Territory has been in effect now for some time. A nighttime curfew is top on the list of the new instructions, measures taken against COVID-19, that is. But how is the current enforcement? That's what our correspondent Dari Idowu seeks to find out.
The gradual easing phase of the total lockdown comes with a new set of ground rules. For Lagos residents, compliance starts with the rush to beat traffic and getting off the road before the curfew enforcement kicks in. But it is not that simple. There's a large percentage of people who live in one state and work in another. We monitor the curfew enforcement at the borderline between Lagos and Ogun states, where there's usually heavy daily interstate crossings. Police patrol vehicle parked in the dark, the road blocked, with a pile of heavy-duty vehicles covering up to 4 kilometers on both sides. It is another trading avenue for these food and beverage vendors. They're making sure that those who are stuck on the road are also not left without food or drinks. For the truck drivers and some travelers, it is time to sleep before the journey continues again by 6 a.m. But there are other travelers who say they've been held up in traffic and must be allowed to continue their journey.
I spent more than 4 hours on Terminal Bridge before getting to Yanowuru. They blocked the road. Before getting here, I spent almost another 2 hours at Ogudu. Before coming to estate, they also blocked the estate. After estate, getting to Bega here. So what time do you expect us to get to?
And we went out to go and also to eat, to find what our children will eat. Nothing. We want to enter now. Look at time now. This is 11:28. 6 o'clock. That I did for Bega there.
The curfew, the ban on interstate travel, and other restrictions are expected to continue until the first day in June as the fight against COVID-19 continues. But the reality on ground shows there are odds against full compliance. Dari Ido, Channels Television News.
And when the news at 10 returns, we'll bring you more update on COVID-19. Plus, Central Bank of Nigeria releases 50 billion naira to Nursel Microfinance Bank for 5,000 beneficiaries of the COVID-19 Intervention Fund. That's on Business News. Do join us again. And to add bite to that curfew enforcement, there shall be no human or vehicular movement across Lagos State from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. According to the police, this forms part of the latest phase of the ease on lockdown directives by the force hierarchy. Speaking on the directive, the Commissioner of Police, Akim Odumosu, explains that the enforcement of the curfew is inclusive of all essential workers.
For those who refuse to comply with that directive, we shall continue to enforce it. And equally, interstate movements has been banned. Only those on essential services are allowed interstate, and that should be before 8 p.m. Once it's 8 p.m., there's total lockdown. That is curfew. No interstate movements, except for those on essential services, which have been enumerated by the federal government. But that interstate movements and that essential service too will cease by 8 o'clock. Either essential service or not, by 8 o'clock, interstate movement ceases. It's curfew. The interstate movement is allowed for essential services between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. Once it's 8 p.m., interstate services cease. Interstate movement. So no cross-border of any state.
Now, as the second phase of the partial lockdown begins, the National Orientation Agency, NOA, is blaming security agencies for failing to strictly enforce the restriction order on its interstate movement. While presenting a report on the agency's observations on the fight against COVID-19, the NOA Director General Dr. Garba Abari said some security personnel are collecting gratification and allowing free passage of unauthorized persons.
The lockdown was initially effective, but subsequently it waned in efficacy, especially in cities where enforcement measures were concentrated. However, in the suburban and the rural areas, businesses continued almost as usual, despite the lockdown. Many religious centers, or most religious centers, complied with the ban on gatherings, especially in the cities. But in the suburban and the rural areas, religious gatherings still continues as usual. Security operatives in some states are compromising the ban on interstate movement by accepting inducement and in exchange granting travelers easy passage.
Well, that's all from this end. Amarachi, it will look like a bumpy start to the second phase of the ease on lockdown, but I hope there will be a clarification as soon as possible. It's back to you in Lagos.
Thanks, Ibrahim. Fingers crossed that happens. But there is some good news coming from the COVID-19 isolation center in Lagos, where a 22-year-old patient has been delivered of a set of twins. This makes it the fourth COVID-19 baby delivery to be undertaken by health officials at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital. The authorities say the twins were delivered through cesarean section with mother and children in stable condition. The statement commends the commitment of the health workers who took the delivery. Now to security matters. A federal lawmaker, Senator Ibrahim Gobir, is accusing the military of abandoning people of his constituency and exposing them to attacks by bandits. Senator Gobir, representing Sokoto East, was responding to a motion drawing the attention of the Senate to the activities of bandits in Niger State. He says many of the people in Sokoto State have fled to Niger Republic for safety, aided by the military of the neighboring country.
So far, we have lost about 300 people. And then at the same time, we lost about 5,780 cows, valued at 2.5 billion. In fact, we have been thinking of writing a letter to the federal government so that we can get reparation for this. Then the way I look at this issue is that the situation is so bad that we only get recourse, we only get help from the Republic of Niger, not even from Nigeria here. What is happening is that when there is a problem, when you call people from the Nigerian army, they will never come. Or they will come and stay somewhere about 4,000 meters and then start watching people being killed. And nobody is doing anything. But immediately you phone the commandant of Solulu, that is about 5 kilometers away. The guy will come in, the army officer will come with his troops, and they help the Nigerians there. So I think there is a problem because we now have redress only from the Nigerian, from the army of the Niger Republic as against the Nigerians. So I think there is need for government to look at this situation. We cannot be penny wise, pound foolish. We cannot be big for nothing.
To the northeast, where calm is said to have returned to Dapchi in Yobe State after yesterday's attack on the town by suspected Boko Haram insurgents. The gunmen were said to have attacked the community, shooting sporadically, but were later engaged in a firefight by troops who killed 7 of the terrorists, with 3 soldiers and 1 mobile policeman sustaining injuries. In February 2018, insurgents attacked Government Girls Science and Technical College, Dapchi, and kidnapped over 100 students who were later freed, leaving 1 student, Leah Sharibu, who remains in their custody until today. In a similar development, troops of Operation Lafia Dole have successfully repelled insurgents' attack in Gajagana in Ngazai local government area of Borno State, killing several of them. Muslim faithful across the country have been asked to look out for the new moon from Friday, May 22nd. This directive comes from the Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs. In a statement, the Deputy Secretary General of the Muslim umbrella body, Professor Salisu Shehu, congratulated the faithful for observing the Ramadan fast and prayed God to grant them the opportunity to witness another Ramadan in good health. Professor Shehu also asked Muslims across the country to look out for a possible announcement by the President General of the NSCIA and Sultan of Sokoto, Alhaji Muhammad Sayyad Abubakar III, on the termination of the 2020 Ramadan fast. Business News is next. Here's Bisi Adebayo.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Welcome to Business News. The federal government has relieved Usman Mohammed of his appointment as the managing director of the Transmission Company of Nigeria. The Minister of Power, Maman Saleh, who approved his sack today, has appointed Sule Abdulaziz to replace him in acting capacity. The Minister of Power also confirmed the appointment of 4 directors who have been in acting position in the company. A total of 5 billion naira has been released by the Central Bank of Nigeria to Nestle Microfinance Bank in an effort to meet the request of over 5,000 beneficiaries of the 50 billion naira targeted credit facility. Speaking on our Business Morning program today, the CBN's Director of Development Finance Department, Mr. Yusuf Yila, assures that approved applications will receive response this week.
The central bank is not just sitting down. We've looked at the data sets that the NMFB has generated. Earlier on, I told you about 300,000 people had applied for the loan. And what the governor has asked us to do is to look at how we can leverage technology more effectively. Yes, there's a lockdown. Yes, a lot of people cannot go to work, but people do need these funds. He's been concerned, especially households. Quite a number of people have lost their jobs. A lot of businesses are running out of cash. And you will see us respond this week. We've been working with the NMFB and a couple of other providers to see how we can utilize technology properly to, one, front load a lot of the activities. Kure talked about the need for a guarantor. So those who have guarantors, not after the loan has been approved, you'll say things like you front load a lot of the information that you have. And once the application is approved within 24 hours, your facility is disbursed to any bank, irrespective, apart from the NMFB, any bank of your choice. So you will see us respond later this week, working with the NMFB to achieve the targets that Governor Emefiele has set.
Let's turn to the markets now, where equities gained from Monday's positive trend with an increase of 136 billion naira in value due to investors' appetite for high-value stocks. Here's Akaite Afia with today's figures.
Here is the stock market report. Nigeria's stock consolidated its previous 37 billion naira gain with a 136 billion naira increase in its overall value today, as investors raised their buy interest for high-value stocks across the 5 sectors of listed equities. Now, this comes after significant gains from the 5 Tier 1 lenders lifted the banking sector higher by 2.08%, while Dangote Cement and Unilever added support to the 1.09% rise in the market's main index. The price table also recorded a positive margin of 29 gainers, led by 10% advance on Caverton's share price, and that's against 5 losers, led by 8% loss from Lisaco Insurance. The total turnover of shares traded for Tuesday was higher by about 9 million units compared to Monday's session at 339.75 million units in more than 4,700 transactions, while Access Bank retains the top spot on the trades list for the second time with 80.64 million shares traded. That's the stock market report. I'm Akaite Afia.
Thanks, Akaite. Meanwhile, U.S. stocks fell to their session lows after the market called its best session in 6 weeks on rising optimism about the coronavirus vaccine. Let's see some of today's numbers. And that's it on business news. It's back to you, Amarachi.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks, Bissy. Still ahead on the news at 10. UK COVID-19 death toll rises above 35,000 as testing drops below target again. We have this and more from a London studio in Around the World in 5. Welcome back. A death toll from the coronavirus in the United Kingdom has risen to 35,341, following an increase of 545 today. The UK's Environment Minister George Eustice gave this information at a press briefing earlier this evening. He says 89,784 tests were carried out in the UK on Monday, but with the total number of administered tests at 2,772,552. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. China has accused US President Donald Trump of shifting the blame for Washington's own mishandling of the COVID-19 crisis after Trump threatened to permanently pull out of the World Health Organization.
They were wrong so much, always on the side of China.
Trump called the WHO a puppet of China before tweeting a letter he had sent to the organization's chief, threatening to permanently freeze funding from the United States. In response, China accused Trump of reducing its own responsibility and international obligations. Meanwhile, in the same press conference, Donald Trump said he was taking hydroxychloroquine, a malaria drug that he has touted despite medical warnings about its use as a preventative medicine against the coronavirus.
A lot of people are taking, a lot of frontline workers are taking hydroxychloroquine. I don't take it because, hey, people said, oh, maybe he owns the company. No, I don't own the company. You know what? I want the people of this nation to feel good. I don't want them being sick. And there's a very good chance that this has an impact, especially early on.
Meanwhile, Australia has threatened to take China to the World Trade Organization to counter a new round of sanctions as the two countries clashed over an investigation into the origins and the spread of the virus. China announced the tariffs after finding Australian subsidies and dumping had damaged domestic industry. The move has worsened a relationship that was already troubled due to Australia's calls for an independent investigation into the origins of the virus. India has begun evacuating thousands of villagers to safety as one of the most powerful cyclones in years is expected to hit the country's east coast. The cyclone has been announced amid India's strict lockdown imposed to prevent the spread of the virus that has killed over 3,000 people out of more than 96,000 infections. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has held a meeting in New Delhi to plan how to mitigate the damage from the cyclone. The Vice President of South Sudan, who was part of a task force to fight coronavirus, is in self-isolation after testing positive for COVID-19. Riek Machar has said that as several other members of the task force were infected, a new team was taking over their work. His wife, who is Defence Minister Angelina Teny, some bodyguards and other staff have also contracted the virus. Experts worry that decades of conflict has left South Sudan incapable of dealing with a surge of new infections. So far, South Sudan has recorded 236 cases of COVID-19 and 4 deaths. Lesotho's Prime Minister Thomas Tabane has finally resigned, ending months of political pressure after he and his current wife were accused of participating in his ex-wife's murder. The pair have denied any involvement in the murder, and Tabane has said that he is resigning because of his age. Lesotho's finance minister has been appointed to become the leader of the new governing coalition. Meanwhile, scientists in Kenya have discovered a microbe they say can protect mosquitoes from malaria. The team of researchers has said that finding has the potential to control the disease. Malaria kills around 800,000 people a year and is second only to tuberculosis in its impact on world health. The bug, which acts as a block to malaria, was discovered on the shores of Lake Victoria in Kenya. And finally, Burkina Faso artist Ali Vahuti has paid tribute to health workers treating COVID-19 in a music video that has lifted the morale of many. In his lyrics, Vahuti described health workers as soldiers who risk themselves and their families to save lives. The musician hopes that his video will help change people's perception of doctors and nurses in Burkina Faso that are often feared and stigmatized. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Welcome to Sports News. The Minister of Youth and Sports Development, Mr. Sunday Dare, has directed coaches of all long-distance races to come up with proposals for renovating the training camps in Pankshin in Plateau State and Mambila in Taraba State to acceptable standards. The minister, who gave the directive at a virtual meeting with the coaches, tasked them to initiate the revival of long-distance races. The English Premier League has confirmed 6 people for 3 clubs who've tested positive for COVID-19. This followed the mandatory testing of 748 players and club staff conducted on Sunday, May the 17th, and Monday, May the 18th. And finally, meanwhile, Watford captain Troy Deeney says he will not return to training because he fears for his family's health amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Premier League clubs unanimously voted in favor of resuming training in small groups from Tuesday, but Deeney does not want to put his baby, who's had breathing difficulties, in any more danger. That's Sports News. Amarachi, back to you.
And the main news again. A presidential task force on COVID-19 today ordered security agencies to begin strict enforcement of the COVID-19 lockdown directives as curfew in affected states takes full effect from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. Also, the Inspector General of Police has asked police commissioners to begin enforcement of compliance with lockdown directives, but journalists, health officials and other essential workers were stopped from moving, a contravention of the directive by the President. And the UK COVID-19 death toll today rose above 35,000 as testing dropped below target again. And that's it on the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I am Amarachi Ubani. Good night and stay safe.